She announced, "My ex read my heart better than you ever will." Loud enough for everyone to hear. I just said, "Then go find him," and walked out. Days later, when she came back in tears, she had no idea who'd be waiting for her at. So I finally figured out what I was doing wrong in my relationship, and honestly, it took a moment of complete public humiliation to see it clearly. Sometimes you need to be hit over the head with reality before you understand what's actually happening in your own life. I'm Blaze, 27, work in marketing coordination here in Seattle. Been with my girlfriend Ember for about 10 months. She's a graphic designer, creative type, really passionate about her work. On paper, we're a good match. Similar values, compatible lifestyles, shared goals about wanting something serious. Things have been mostly good between us, or at least I thought they were. But there's been this thing that's been nagging at me for a while, and I kept telling myself I was being paranoid or insecure. She mentions her ex sometimes, not constantly, but often enough that I've started noticing the pattern. Little comments about how he would have handled something differently, or how he used to do this thing she missed, or how their relationship had this dynamic that she found meaningful. The first few times it happened, I didn't think much of it. We were talking about communication styles and she mentioned how her ex was really good at reading her moods. Fair enough. People have relationship history. They learn things from past experiences. I'm secure enough to handle my girlfriend having a past, right? But then it started happening more frequently. We'd be planning a trip and she'd mention how Xander always knew the perfect restaurants to try. We'd be watching a movie and she'd comment on how he introduced her to this director. We'd have a disagreement, and she'd reference how he handled conflict differently. Each individual comment seemed harmless, but collectively, they started forming this picture of someone who was still emotionally invested in a relationship that ended 2 years ago. And more importantly, someone who was constantly measuring our relationship against that standard. I told myself it was normal. People have relationship history, they compare experiences, whatever. I'm secure enough to handle my girlfriend having a past. Except apparently I'm not as secure as I thought I was, because this shit was starting to eat at me. The thing is, I couldn't figure out how to address it without sounding jealous or controlling. What was I supposed to say? Stop mentioning your ex? That feels petty. I don't like when you compare me to him? That feels insecure. So I just absorbed it. Tried to be understanding. Tried to be the bigger person. Last weekend we were at our friend River's birthday party. Good crowd, people I like. Relaxed atmosphere. Everyone's a few drinks in, having those deeper conversations that happen when you're comfortable and slightly buzzed. Someone brings up communication in relationships. How different people express love, how to navigate conflict, that kind of thing. I actually thought it was a good topic. Ember and I had been having some minor communication issues lately. Nothing major, just the normal stuff that comes up when you're figuring out how to be together. I was curious to hear what she thought about it. That's when Ember decided to share her insights with the entire table. "You know what's interesting," she said, and I could already feel the shift in her tone. There was this nostalgic quality to her voice that I'd started recognizing. "I was just thinking about this because Xander, my ex, he always understood what I needed without me having to explain it. He just got me in ways that are hard to describe." The conversation kind of paused. I felt every person at that table glance at me, then away, then back at me. River actually winced. I could see people suddenly finding their drinks very interesting. Like, "Blaze is great," she continued, apparently not reading the room at all. But Xander had this intuitive understanding of my emotional language. He could tell when I needed space versus when I needed attention. He just knew me. I sat there for about 10 seconds, feeling this weird calm wash over me. Not anger, not hurt, just this crystalline clarity about what I was hearing. All those individual comments, all those small comparisons, had just been distilled into one public statement. "I'm not enough, and here's who would be better." "Sounds like you miss him," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Maybe you should reach out." The table went dead quiet. Ember looked at me like I'd just suggested she burn her house down. "What?" "No, I'm not saying I want to be with him. I'm just saying he understood my communication style better." "Right," I said. "So maybe you guys should talk about that. Sounds like you have some unfinished business to work through." I finished my drink, told River happy birthday, and left. Ember followed me outside, confused and defensive. Why are you being weird about this? I was just making conversation. You weren't making conversation, I said. You were comparing me to another man in front of our friends and finding me lacking. That's not conversation. That's humiliation. You're being oversensitive. I didn't say anything bad about you. You didn't need to. You made it clear where your heart is. So go where your heart is. That's when something clicked for me that I hadn't understood before. I haven't been angry about it, which is probably the weirdest part. I just stepped back. Not in a dramatic way, not as punishment or to prove a point. I just stopped trying so hard, stopped initiating plans, stopped being available whenever she wanted to hang out, stopped putting energy into someone who was clearly still emotionally invested elsewhere. She's been texting me asking why I'm being distant, if I'm mad, whether we can talk about what happened. I'm not mad. I'm just not competing for someone's affection anymore. Here's what I realized. When someone publicly compares you to their ex and finds you wanting, they're telling you something important. They're telling you that you're not their first choice, you're just their current choice. And life's too short to be anyone's consolation prize. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too harsh. But right now, stepping back feels like the most honest thing I can do for both of us. Update 1. Well, she took my advice. And the results have been educational, in that way where reality starts teaching lessons that arguments never could. First, thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your responses helped me understand that my reaction wasn't an overreaction. When someone compares you unfavorably to their ex in public, that's not normal relationship behavior. That's someone telling you exactly where you rank in their priorities. So here's what's happened since then, and honestly, it's been like watching someone play out a fantasy in real time while everyone else can see it's going to crash and burn. Ember reached out to Xander about 3 days after the party. Started with a "Hey, how are you" text, then moved into "I've been thinking about our relationship lately" territory. From what I understand through our mutual friends. Because yes, Seattle's a small place and everyone knows everyone. He responded politely but briefly. Standard small talk. Nothing deep. Definitely nothing romantic. But apparently that was enough encouragement for Ember to interpret as interest. Which tells me everything I need to know about how she was reading our relationship too. Finding meaning and connection in places where it probably didn't exist. She's been persistent. And by persistent, I mean she's shown up at his coffee shop twice, his gym once, and somehow figured out where he works so she could accidentally bump into him at lunch. River told me about this because he's friends with both of us and wanted me to know what was happening. Not because he thought I should do anything about it, but because he knows I'm the type of person who'd rather have the full picture than live in ignorance. The first time River told me about the coffee shop thing, I felt this weird mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication because it confirmed that my instincts about where her heart was were correct. Sadness because I genuinely cared about this person, and watching her chase after someone who clearly wasn't interested was just pathetic. But here's what's been surprising. I'm not angry about it. I'm not even jealous. I'm just relieved. For months, I'd been feeling like I was failing at something without understanding what it was. Now I understand that I was trying to compete with a ghost, and you can't win that competition because the ghost doesn't have to deal with real-life stuff like bad breath in the morning or disagreements about whose turn it is to do dishes. Meanwhile, I've been living my life, and it's been really good. I joined a climbing gym, which I'd been thinking about for months but never followed through on. Started working on some personal projects I'd been putting off while I was focused on trying to make Ember happy. Reconnected with friends I'd been neglecting because I was spending all my free time trying to figure out why my girlfriend seemed chronically dissatisfied with our relationship. The weird thing is how much clearer everything becomes when you stop trying to manage someone else's emotions. I'd been walking on eggshells for months without even realizing it. Constantly adjusting my behavior based on Ember's moods and reactions. When you step out of that dynamic, you realize how exhausting it was. Like, I'd started second-guessing myself about everything. Should I suggest this restaurant, or would she think it's boring? Should I tell her about this work thing, or would she compare it to how Xander handled his career? Should I plan something spontaneous, or would she prefer if I checked with her first? It was like being in a relationship with someone who was constantly grading me, and I never knew what the criteria were. Now I wake up and just live my day, make decisions based on what I want to do, what sounds interesting, what feels right. It's incredible how much mental energy was being drained by trying to anticipate someone else's constantly shifting expectations. Ember's been texting me less frequently, which honestly is fine. The conversations we have had are surface level. She asks how I'm doing. I give brief but polite responses. We don't make plans. She hasn't brought up the party incident again, which tells me she probably knows she crossed a line but doesn't want to admit it. From what River tells me, Xander has been clear with her that he's not interested in rekindling anything. He's got a girlfriend now, someone named Ivy, has moved on completely, and isn't interested in rehashing their past. But Ember seems to be interpreting his politeness as some kind of hidden signal, which is exactly the kind of thing that would have driven me crazy if I was still invested in this situation. I'm not involved in any of this drama, which feels like the healthiest place to be. I'm not trying to win her back. I'm not competing with a ghost. I'm not trying to prove my worth to someone who's made it clear they're comparing me to someone else. Some people have asked if I miss her. Honestly, I miss the good parts of what we had. The Sunday morning coffee runs, the way she'd get excited about her design projects, how she could make me laugh when she wasn't being nostalgic about her past. But I don't miss feeling like I was constantly being measured against someone else's memory of another person. And here's what I'm learning. The right person won't make you feel like you're auditioning for a role someone else used to play. They'll just be grateful to have you, the way you are, without needing you to prove that you're better than whoever came before. Update 2. So remember how I said reality has a way of teaching lessons that arguments never could? Well, reality just delivered a masterclass to Ember, and honestly, watching it happen has been both satisfying and kind of sad. Xander finally had enough of Ember's coincidental encounters, and told her directly that he's not interested in reconnecting. Not as friends, not as anything. He's in a serious relationship with someone named Ivy, he's moved on completely, and he'd appreciate it if Ember would respect that and stop showing up places where he's trying to live his life. According to River, who got this from Willow, Ember's roommate, the conversation was polite but absolutely final. Xander essentially said that their relationship ended 2 years ago for good reasons. He's not nostalgic about it, and he has no interest in revisiting that chapter of his life. Apparently he was kind but firm, the way you'd talk to someone who was clearly misunderstanding the situation. Here's the part that really put everything in perspective for me. Willow finally told Ember why Xander actually broke up with her back then. Turns out it wasn't this mutual, amicable thing that Ember had been describing to people. He ended it because he found her exhausting, clingy, dramatic, and constantly creating problems that didn't need to exist. The intuitive understanding she'd been romanticizing, he told Willow it was actually him walking on eggshells trying to manage her moods and reactions. Sound familiar? That's literally the same dynamic I'd been experiencing without realizing it. So Ember spent 6 weeks chasing after a relationship that never existed in the form she remembered it. She'd constructed this entire fantasy about how perfect they were together, when in reality, he'd been struggling with the exact same issues that had been making our relationship feel so difficult. I'm not going to lie. There was definitely a moment of vindication when I heard this. All those times she'd made me feel like I was failing at something, like I wasn't intuitive enough or understanding enough, turned out to be her projecting this idealized version of a relationship that had actually been just as problematic as ours. But mostly, I just felt sad for her. Not in a condescending way, but genuinely sad. She'd spent months comparing our real relationship to a fantasy, and now she was realizing that the fantasy had been built on completely false memories. She called me last night, crying, wanting to talk about everything. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity, maybe residual care for someone I'd genuinely loved for almost a year. She admitted that she'd made a huge mistake, that she'd idealized her past and taken our present for granted. She asked if we could start over, if I'd be willing to work through this together. She said she understood now what she'd lost. I realize what I had with you was real, and what I thought I had with him was just fantasy, she said through tears. I threw away something good for something that was never actually good to begin with. I told her I appreciated the apology, and I genuinely did. It takes courage to admit you've been wrong about something that fundamental. But I also told her that she'd already shown me where her priorities were. When someone's first instinct during a relationship discussion is to talk about how much better their ex understood them, they're telling you that you're not their first choice. And I'm not interested in being anyone's backup plan. But I know better now, she said. I realize what I had with you was real, and what I thought I had with him was just fantasy. Maybe, I said, but you had to lose what we had and get rejected by him to figure that out. That tells me everything I need to know about how you really felt about our relationship. The conversation was sad but not angry. We talked for about an hour, and she kept coming back to this theme of how she'd learned her lesson, how she understood now what she'd thrown away. But here's the thing. I shouldn't have to be the practice round for her personal growth. I shouldn't be the safe option she comes back to after chasing what she really wanted. I genuinely hope she learns something from this experience that helps her in future relationships. But I'm not willing to be the testing ground for whether she's really changed or if she's just temporarily scared because her fantasy didn't work out. The conversation ended with her asking if there was any chance, any possibility that we could try again. I told her I'd think about it, but honestly, I already knew the answer. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Not because of anger or resentment, but because the trust that held them up is gone. River thinks I'm being too harsh, but honestly, I feel more at peace than I have in months. I'm not carrying around the weight of someone else's unresolved feelings anymore. I'm not wondering if I'm enough or if someone from her past would handle things better. I've been seeing someone new, met her at the climbing gym. Her name's Sky, and the difference is night and day. She doesn't talk about her exes, doesn't make me feel like I'm competing with ghosts, doesn't use other people to make points about our relationship. She just chooses to be with me, clearly and consistently. When we have conversations about communication or relationship dynamics, she talks about us, about what we're building together, about how we can understand each other better. She doesn't reference some other relationship as the gold standard. She's present in ours. That's what I was missing with Ember. The sense that I was chosen, not settled for. The feeling that she was building something with me instead of constantly measuring it against something else. It's still early with Sky, but everything feels different, easier, like I can just be myself without wondering if myself is good enough. Final update: Ember's pursuit of Xander escalated to the point where he had to block her on all social media and threaten legal action if she didn't stop showing up at his workplace. Ivy, his girlfriend, had to get involved when Ember started messaging her directly, asking her to step aside so Xander could figure out his real feelings. The whole thing became this cautionary tale in our friend group about what happens when you romanticize the past instead of appreciating the present. According to Willow, Ember's been struggling with dating since then. Apparently, she has a pattern of bringing up her exes early in relationships, comparing new guys to previous experiences. Most people don't stick around for that kind of thing. She also had some professional consequences. When her workplace found out about the stalking behavior, it created some HR issues. Nothing career-ending, but definitely reputation-damaging in a way that followed her around for a while. Meanwhile, things with Sky have been incredible. We've been together for 4 months now, and it's the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. She's present, she's engaged with our actual life together, and she doesn't make me feel like I'm auditioning for a role someone else used to play. Last month, Ember reached out one more time. A long email about how she'd been going to therapy, how she understood now what she'd lost, how I was perfect for her all along. She asked if there was any chance we could try again. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to say. She'd already shown me who she prioritized when she had the choice. Believing her would be like betting on someone who'd already shown their cards. The whole experience taught me something crucial about relationships. When someone shows you where you rank in their affections, believe them the first time. Don't wait for them to figure out your worth after they've chased something else and come up empty. River asked me if I ever wondered what would have happened if I'd fought for her instead of stepping back. Honestly, no. Fighting for someone's attention is just another form of auditioning. The right person doesn't make you compete for their affection. Sky chose me from day one. Not after comparing me to other options. Not after testing whether something better was available. Just chose me. That's what I was looking for without realizing it.